Her sister is just a pathetic single mom, my sister's future husband said into the microphone. And my mother, sitting just 3 seats away, laughed so hard she almost spilled her drink. 200 guests copied her and laughed too. The fancy glass lights on the ceiling lit up every smiling face, every raised glass, every person who thought my life was a joke in someone else's wedding speech. I sat at table 12, the table they put you at when they wish you hadn't come. I didn't move. My hands stayed flat on the white tablecloth. I kept breathing slowly and calmly. But under the table, my 12-year-old son's hand was squeezed into a fist so tight that his knuckles had turned white. What none of them knew, not my mother, not Derek, not one single person in that room, was that my son had been holding on to a secret for 3 weeks. And he was about to share it with every last one of them. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly connects with you. Drop a comment with where you are and what time it is there. I always love knowing where you're listening from. I'm Fiona. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of my sister's wedding, the one that never actually happened. Now, let me take you back 6 months to the phone call that started everything. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of drawing a new logo for a big company in New Haven when Brooke's name showed up on my phone. I almost let it ring. My sister and I talked maybe once a month. Short, polite conversations that never said anything real. I'm engaged, she screamed before I could even finish saying hello. Congratulations, I said. I meant it. No matter what had gone wrong between us over the years, I still wanted her to be happy. His name is Derek Mercer. He works in real estate. Mom already loves him. She paused. Mom says you have to come to the dinner to celebrate. No excuses this time. Not I want you there. Not it would mean a lot. Mom says you have to come. That was the Henderson family in 4 words. My mother, Judith Henderson, had spent 30 years getting very good at comparing her 2 daughters. Brooke was the daughter who got the good looks, the fancy hotel job, and the rich social life. I was the daughter who got divorced at 26, moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Hartford, and started a graphic design business from a use desk. My walls were covered in work I had done for clients all over Connecticut. Clean, neat, close to award-winning. My mother had never once asked to see any of it. That night, after my son Ethan went to bed, I scrolled through the family group chat. Brooke had sent a photo of her ring. A big, fancy diamond, the kind of ring that says everything before the person wearing it says a word. My mother's reply sat at the bottom of the thread. Finally, one of my daughters did something right. I read it twice. Then I closed the app and went back to my logo. Some messages don't need a reply. They just need to be remembered. I met Derek Mercer for the first time at my mother's house in Greenwich, a big, old-style home she bought with money from her divorce. It was the kind of house with a shiny stone entrance hall and fresh flowers on every surface. A fancy candle burned in the living room, as if the house needed its own special smell. Derek arrived 10 minutes after we did. He wore an expensive designer jacket, slim pants, and polished shoes. He shook my hand firmly and looked me in the eye just long enough to feel like he had practiced it. But the first thing I noticed was something else, the way he scanned the room before he greeted anyone. He looked at the art on the walls, the furniture, the size of the space. Then he went straight to my mother. Mrs. Henderson, this house has more character than half the homes I've sold this year. He pointed to a painting above the fireplace. Is that a Martin Johnson head? The light in it is amazing. My mother practically glowed. She touched his arm and launched into the story of how she had found it at an estate sale. I watched Derek nod in all the right places, ask the right follow-up questions, and copy her body language like a man who had studied the rules of how to impress people. When he finally turned to me, the warmth in his voice dropped by exactly 1 degree. Fiona, great to finally meet you. He shook my hand but didn't hold it. When Ethan stepped forward and said, Nice to meet you, sir, Derek gave him a quick nod, no handshake, no eye contact, and turned back to Brooke. Brooke looked clearly happy. She held Derek's arm like he was the answer to a question she had been asking her whole life. During dinner, I saw Derek check his phone under the table. The screen lit up with a name, V, and a heart emoji. He swiped it away in half a second. I told myself it was nothing. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet for the first 10 minutes. That was unusual. My son was the kind of 12-year-old who had opinions about everything: computer programs, graphic novels, how bridges were built. Silence from Ethan meant something was being figured out. Mom, he finally said, looking out the passenger window at the highway lights. Why doesn't Grandma ever ask about your work? I kept my eyes on the road. She has a lot going on, buddy. She asked Derek about his job 3 times. She didn't ask you once. I didn't have an answer that would make sense to him. The truth, that my mother had never forgiven me for my divorce, wasn't something I wanted to hand a 12-year-old. Tyler and I split when Ethan was 4. Tyler had been seeing someone from work for 6 months. I found out through a credit card bill, a hotel receipt for a weekend. He told me he was at a work conference. Clear, simple, proven cheating. I filed for divorce. He signed. He moved to Oregon and called Ethan once a month, then once every few months, then not at all. My mother's response: "You pushed him away, Fiona. Men like Tyler don't just leave." I stopped trying to earn my mother's approval the year I turned 30. Some things aren't worth chasing. But I had rebuilt my life. I had clients who paid the bills. Ethan was healthy, curious, and getting straight A's. Our apartment was small, but it was ours. Every lamp chosen, every picture hung, every inch earned. I drove a 2019 Honda Civic, fully paid off. Nothing fancy, and I didn't owe anyone a thing. "I don't trust him, Mom," Ethan said as we pulled into our parking lot. "Derek, he smiles too much." I almost laughed. "That's not a crime, Ethan." "No," he said, "but it's a clue." 4 months before the wedding, Brooke called to offer me a role. "I want you to be a bridesmaid," she said. And for a moment, something warm opened up in my chest. It lasted 12 hours. The next morning, Judith called. "I've spoken with Brooke. We've decided the wedding party needs to look a certain way. You'll do a reading during the ceremony instead. A poem. Something nice." "A reading? It's an important role. Fiona, don't make this difficult." "A certain way." That was the word she used. What she meant was that the bridesmaids would be photographed and I didn't fit the picture. So I was off the wedding party. No dress fitting, no bridal shower invite, just a poem and a seat at whatever table they stuck me at. I didn't argue. I had spent enough years learning that arguing with Judith was like arguing with the weather, exhausting and pointless. What did catch my attention was the wedding venue. Derek had chosen the Lockwood Estate, a beautiful property outside Litchfield, rolling green lawns, stone terraces, and a ballroom that could hold 250 people. The deposit alone was $85,000, and Derek had insisted on signing the contract himself. "Let me handle this," he told Brooke. "A man takes care of these things." Judith loved that. She was writing the checks, over $200,000 from her own money, but Derek's name was on the venue contract. Nobody questioned it. One evening, I overheard Brooke on the phone. "Derek says a prenup would ruin the trust between us. He says if I really love him, I won't need a safety net." I stood in the hallway of my mother's house and felt every warning bell in my body go off at once. The man who insisted on handling all the money was the same man refusing to let anyone look at his. I tried once. One conversation. That's all I asked for. I met Brooke alone at a coffee shop in Stamford. No Judith. No Derek. I kept it simple. "Have you looked into Derek's finances? A prenup isn't a sign of distrust. It protects both of you." Brooke's face went stiff before I even finished the sentence. "You're jealous." She said it like she had been waiting to say it. "You couldn't keep a husband, so you don't want me to have one." "Brooke, that's not." "Save it, Fiona. I know exactly what this is." She left her coffee untouched on the table and walked out. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching the foam melt into nothing. That night, Judith called. Her voice had the cold, careful calm she used when she wanted to hurt without leaving a mark. "Brooke told me what you said. If you ruin this wedding, Fiona, you are no longer welcome in this family. No Thanksgiving, no Christmas, nothing." She paused. "Do you understand me? Mom, I think there are things about Derek that Brooke needs to." "I don't want to hear it. This is the best thing that has ever happened to your sister. I will not let you ruin it because you're bitter about your own choices." She hung up. I sat in my apartment, my small, clean, fully paid-for apartment, and looked at the 2 computer screens on my desk glowing with client work. The walls were covered in designs I was proud of, quiet proof of a life I had built from the pieces of one that had fallen apart. Then I picked up my phone and called Rachel Whitmore. "Rach," I said, "if I wanted to look into someone's background, just, to be safe, how would I do that?" Rachel didn't miss a beat. "You'd call your best friend who happens to be a family lawyer, which you just did." 2 months before the wedding, there was a family brunch at the Meadow Ridge Country Club, the kind of place where the tablecloths are so stiff they could almost stand on their own and the orange juice drinks cost $18 a glass. Derek was at his best that morning. He had just finished a story about closing a big deal in Westport when he turned to me with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "So, Fiona, still doing the little art thing from home?" "That must be." He tilted his head. Cozy. Before I could respond, Judith laughed. A quick, practice sound. Derek, don't be mean. She's doing her best. Not everyone is cut out for the real world. Brooke looked down at her phone. She always looked down at her phone. Derek wasn't finished. He turned to Ethan, who was quietly eating his French toast, and dropped his voice into the fake friendly way adults talk to little kids. And this must be the man of the house, who? Ethan set down his fork. I'm 12, sir. Flat voice. Direct eye contact. Derek blinked once, then laughed it off and went back to his Westport story. 15 minutes later, Derek excused himself to the restroom and left his phone face up on the table. It buzzed once, then again. The message was visible to anyone sitting within 3 feet. V, miss you. When are you coming to the city? I was across the table. I didn't see it. Ethan did. He was right there, 1 seat away, and he read every word on that screen before it went dark. He didn't say anything. He picked up his fork, went back to his French toast, and kept it in his mind. I wouldn't find out about this for another 2 weeks. The bridal shower happened on a Saturday in March. I found out about it the way you find out about bad weather. It was already happening by the time I noticed. Brooke's Instagram story. 30 women at a spa in Greenwich. A tower of champagne glasses catching the afternoon light. Matching robes. Someone holding a sign that said, Future Mrs. Mercer. My mother was front and center in every photo, arm around Brooke, beaming like a woman who had finally gotten the daughter she had ordered. The caption read, My beautiful daughter and her tribe. So proud. Daughter. 1. Singular. I wasn't angry. I was past angry. Angry was 3 exits back on a road I had been driving my whole life. What I felt was a cold, clear calm. The kind that comes when you finally stop expecting things from people who were never going to give them. Then the email arrived. A charge notification. $3,200 to a Greenwich day spa, posted to a credit card with my name on it. An old card from college that I had been added to years ago and completely forgotten about. Judith had charged the entire bridal shower to it. I called her. Mom, there's a $3,200 charge on my card. Think of it as your contribution, since you couldn't be bothered to attend. I wasn't invited. A pause. Don't start, Fiona. I hung up. I called the bank, removed myself from the card, and disputed the charge. It was fixed in 11 days. But the damage from that phone call was not about money. That night, I sat at my desk with Wyke open on both screens and called Rachel. Something is very wrong with this family, I told her. And Rach, I think something is wrong with Derek too. The background check is already running, she said. Give me a week. The tuxedo fitting was Brooke's idea. She wanted Ethan to be a junior usher, one of the few kind gestures that actually felt like it came from her and not from Judith. So I drove Ethan to the tailor in Darien on a Thursday afternoon, his school backpack still over one shoulder. Derek arrived 20 minutes late with 3 groomsmen and the kind of energy that fills a room by pushing everyone else out of the way. He saw Ethan standing on the fitting platform in a small vest and turned to his best man, Todd, with a grin. He said it just loud enough to be heard. Not a whisper, a comment meant to reach people's ears. Brooke insisted on including him. You know, the kid without a dad needs a male role model somewhere. Todd laughed. The other groomsmen gave small, uncomfortable smiles. The tailor kept his eyes on his measuring tape. Ethan didn't move. His reflection in the 3-part mirror stared back at him, a 12-year-old boy in a half-fitted vest, his face turning red from the collar up. I had been in the waiting area. I walked in just in time to see my son's expression, that lockjaw stillness that meant he was holding something down with both hands. His name is Ethan, I said. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking inside my coat pockets. And he has everything he needs. Derek raised both hands. Relax, Fiona. It was just guy talk. I held his gaze for 3 seconds. He looked away first. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet until we got on the Merritt Parkway. Then, quietly, Mom, I saw something on Derek's phone at brunch. Messages from someone named V. He paused. They weren't normal. Messages. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I'll tell you everything when we get home. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Ethan did his homework every night, where I spread out design work, where we ate Thai food on Fridays. That ordinary table became the place where everything changed. At brunch, Ethan said. When Derek went to the bathroom, his phone kept buzzing. The messages were right there on the screen, from someone named V. What did they say? He pulled out his own phone and opened the Notes app. He had typed everything from memory that same night, word for word, the way a kid who codes remembers how something is written. B said, Can't wait for this circus to be over. Derek replied, 3 years max, then I'm set. And V said, just get through the wedding, babe. I sat there. The kitchen faucet dripped. The refrigerator hummed. I didn't speak. I didn't want to cause trouble, Mum. His voice was small. But after what he said about me today at the fitting. Ethan. I reached across the table and held his hand. You did the right thing telling me. He nodded. I could see the relief come over him, the weight of carrying someone else's secret for 2 weeks finally lifting off his shoulders. I spent that night lying awake, turning the same question over and over in my mind. If I brought this to Brooke, she would call me jealous. If I brought it to Judith, she would call me a troublemaker. If I stayed quiet, my sister would marry a man who had called their wedding a circus and already given it an end date. The next morning, I called Rachel. I need you to run that background check now. Full public records. Credit report if you can get it through the proper channels. Everything legal, everything documented. Give me a week, she said. And Fiona, if what your son saw is real, this isn't just about your sister anymore. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private dining room at a fancy French restaurant in Greenwich. 40 guests, all close family and friends, fancy glasses, candlelight, and the quiet sound of people who knew how to look wealthy at a dinner table. Derek stood to make a toast. He held his glass of red wine like a prop in a one-man show. To family, he said, letting the words settle. The ones who show up. His eyes found mine across the table. Who, well, try their best. Polite laughter. Judith raised her glass. Brooke squeezed Derek's arm. I kept my face calm. Ethan, sitting beside me, cut his steak without looking up. Partway through dessert, Derek stepped outside with 3 groomsmen to smoke cigars. He left his phone on the white tablecloth, face down, right next to his water glass. It started buzzing almost immediately, 3 times in a row. The vibration was loud enough to make people turn their heads. Ethan glanced at me. I was talking to an aunt I barely knew. No one was watching him. He reached across, tilted the phone just enough to see the screen. Message after message from V, full text visible. Can't wait for this circus to be over. You know I'm the one you come home to. 3 years max, right? Ethan slid his own phone out of his jacket pocket. 4 photos, clean, clear, with timestamps. The contact name, the message previews, the time, all captured in the glow of the restaurant's candlelight. Then he set Derek's phone back exactly where it had been. Same angle, same position. Derek came back 5 minutes later, smelling like cigar smoke and confidence. He picked up his phone without a second glance. My 12-year-old was the only person at that table paying attention to the truth. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, my mother called me to Greenwich. She was waiting in the living room. Coffee in an expensive cup, a gold bracelet catching the light from the window. Her posture so straight it looked like it was built that way. Everything about Judith Henderson was put together on purpose, even the way she delivered threats. I know you have opinions about Derek, she said before I had even taken off my coat. You will keep them to yourself tomorrow. This is Brooke's day. Mom, I think there are things about Derek that Brooke needs to know before she... Like what? Judith set down her cup. That he's too good for this family. That a man with his career and his charm chose your sister. If anything, Fiona, that should give you hope. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds exactly like what you always do. Find a way to make Brooke's happiness about your unhappiness. She stood up and straightened her silk blouse. Let me be clear. If you cause any drama at that wedding, you are out. No Thanksgiving, no Christmas, no phone calls. I will not have you embarrass this family again. Again. As if my entire life had been one long embarrassment. I left without saying a word. There was nothing to say to a woman who had already decided the verdict before hearing the case. In the car, I sat with the engine off for a full minute. Then my phone beeped. An email from Rachel Whitmore. Subject line, background results. Derek Mercer. The body of the email was 3 words. Call me now. I called. What Rachel told me over the next 12 minutes changed everything. But that conversation deserves its own section. Rachel didn't soften it. She never did. It was the thing I loved most about her. Derek Mercer currently has $187,000 in personal debt, she said. Student loans, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a personal loan from a private lender at 19% interest. I pulled the car to the side of the road. His job at Whitfield and Partners ended 4 months ago. He was fired, not laid off, fired. The reason listed in their HR records is lying about client investment accounts. He told Brooke he's a senior partner there. There is no senior partner named Derek Mercer. There hasn't been for 4 months. And that company he keeps talking about, Mercer Property Group. I checked it. It's a registered company with 0 employees, 0 income, and a mailing address that traces to a UPS store in Stamford. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. He's not marrying your sister for love, Fiona. Rachel's voice was steady and matter-of-fact, the way it got when she was building a case. He's marrying her for her family's money. If I show this to Brooke, she won't believe me. Judith will say I made it all up. You won't have to make anything up. This is all public record. Job verification, company filings, credit report through a licensed consumer data company. My bar number is on every page. Anyone can check it. Then I need it printed. Everything. Tonight. Already done. I'll drop it off within the hour. I sat in my car on the side of the road and watched the traffic pass. I had the proof. Screenshots from Ethan, a background report from a licensed attorney, 2 separate sources, 2 separate moments, pointing at the same man. What I didn't have was a family willing to listen. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and made a decision. I put on a navy blue wrap dress, no fancy label, just a clean fit, and pinned my hair back with a simple clip. Ethan wore his dark suit from the fitting, the one Derek's comment had put a stain on that couldn't be washed out. He stood at the hallway mirror, tying his own tie, tongue between his teeth in concentration. Something in my chest tightened. Ready? I asked. Ready. I slipped a large envelope into my bag. Rachel's report, 12 pages, her letterhead, her bar number, date stamped. I told myself, only if absolutely necessary. Only if there's no other way. Ethan patted his jacket pocket. I have the screenshots, Mom. Just in case. We're not here to cause a scene, Ethan. We're here for your aunt. He looked at me, calm, serious, older than 12. I know, but someone should be here for the truth, too. The Lockwood estate was everything Judith had wanted. Stone terraces wrapped in climbing roses. A small orchestra playing soft music in the garden. 200 chairs covered in white silk, facing an arch full of flowers. Glass decorations everywhere, catching the light and throwing it back, making the whole place shine like something out of a magazine. I saw Derek by the main entrance, greeting guests with the easy confidence of a man who had practiced every handshake. He spotted me and gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Glad you could make it, Fiona. Love the simple look. I walked past him without saying a word. Inside the ballroom, I found our place cards. Table 12, back corner, near the door where the staff came in and out. Ethan picked up his card and read the number. Table 12, he said. That's the table for people they wish didn't come. So here I am. Table 12. A bag with a background check inside. My 12-year-old son next to me with screenshots on his phone. Neither of us planned to use any of it. I came to that wedding fully ready to stay quiet and let Brooke have her day. But then Derek opened his mouth. What would you have done if you had the proof, but your own family refused to listen? Would you have spoken up? Or stayed quiet? Type A if you would have stayed silent. Type B if you would have spoken up. I'll tell you what happened next. And honestly, I didn't get to choose. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give it that. Brooke walked down the aisle in a long veil, arm linked through Judith's, since our father wasn't there to do it. His choice. Arizona, a new wife, a clean start. Judith wore champagne-colored silk and a smile so wide it could have sold jewelry. The small orchestra shifted to a soft, flowing piece of music. 200 people stood. Phones rose like a field of little glass flowers. And Brooke, my little sister, the favorite, the golden child, looked genuinely, heartbreakingly beautiful. Genuinely happy. I watched her face and thought, what if I'm wrong? What if Derek really does love her? The officiant opened his book. Dearly beloved. Derek said his vows without a single stumble. Eye contact, perfect pauses, and his voice cracked at exactly the right moment. It was a flawless performance. The woman 2 rows ahead of me wiped her eyes. Judith pressed a handkerchief to her cheek. Brooke's vows were different. Her voice shook. Her hands trembled. She forgot a line, laughed at herself, and started over. It was real, painfully, clearly real. I do, she said. I do, he said. I now pronounce you husband and wife. My bag sat on my lap, the envelope inside untouched. Ethan's hand rested on his jacket pocket. Still, I had missed the window. The ceremony was done. They were married, at least in the eyes of 200 guests who were already on their feet, clapping, crying, tossing rose petals. But here's the thing about a wedding in Connecticut. The ceremony is a performance. The legal part, the marriage certificate, the officiant's signature, the paperwork filed with the county, that happens afterward, usually quietly, before the reception ends. Reverend Collins hadn't signed anything yet. The paperwork was still sitting on a small table in a back room. They were married in the eyes of the crowd, but not yet in the eyes of the law. The ballroom at the Lockwood estate had been turned into something out of a magazine. A 12-layer cake with flowers made of sugar, napkins with B&D printed on them in gold, a custom drink menu printed on fancy cardstock. 200 guests settled into their chairs with the happy hum of people who believed they had just watched love happen. Toast time. Since our father wasn't there, Judith took the microphone first. She held it with both hands and gave a speech that was half performance, half farewell to the daughter she preferred. I always knew one of my daughters would find someone worthy of her. She let the weight of those words land like a dropped glass. A few guests glanced my way. I kept my eyes on the table decoration. Then it was Derek's turn. He took the microphone with the ease of a man who had spoken at 100 business dinners, 100 pitch meetings, 100 rooms full of people he needed to impress. I want to thank everyone who's here today, he said. Even those who, well, let's just say not everyone in this family believed in us. He looked directly at me. The room followed his gaze. Todd, his best man, leaned into a side microphone. Yeah, we almost had to give Fiona an extra seat, but she brought her kid instead. Laughter. Loud. Rolling, the kind that bounces off glass and marble. Come on, Todd, be nice. Derek smiled. Fiona is. He paused, timing it perfectly. She's just a pathetic single mom trying to figure it out. The ballroom exploded. 200 people laughing at me. I felt heat rise from my chest to my face. My fingers pressed flat against the tablecloth. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then I heard Ethan's chair scrape back. The laughter hadn't fully settled when my mother stood up. She was still holding her champagne glass. She had that smile, the one she wore when she was about to say something cruel and call it a joke. Oh, Derek, don't be too hard on her. Judith's voice carried across the entire room. She's like a bargain item with a damaged label. Still on the shelf, but nobody's buying. 200 people laughed. Some tried not to. Most didn't bother. I sat perfectly still, hands flat on the table, eyes straight ahead. The glass lights above scattered light across the ceiling like 1,000 tiny sharp pieces, and every single one of them felt aimed at table 12. This was the moment my mother had been building toward my whole life, the public announcement that I was the lesser daughter, said in front of a crowd big enough to make it permanent. But she miscalculated one thing. She forgot about the boy sitting next to me. Ethan's napkin hit the table. His chair scraped the hardwood floor. He was on his feet before I could even process what was happening. Ethan, I grabbed his wrist. Sit down. He looked at me. 12 years old. Dark suit from Mace's. A jaw set like stone. No, Mom. He pulled free. And he walked across the ballroom, past table 11, table 10, table 6, past the 12-layer cake and the gold-printed napkins and the 200 people who had just laughed at his mother. He walked all the way to the front of the room, stepped up to the small platform, and took the microphone off its stand. The room noticed. Conversation stopped. Fox paused in mid-air. Ethan tapped the mic once. The sound popped through the speakers. I know something about the groom. The ballroom went silent. Every single pair of eyes in that room locked onto my son. He stood at the podium, shoulders square, chin up, the overhead light catching the lapels of his off-the-rack suit. He looked incredibly small against the backdrop of the flower arch and the 12-layer cake. But his voice didn't shake. 3 weeks ago, at the rehearsal dinner, Ethan said, I saw messages on your phone, Derek. Derek was still standing near the head table, his champagne glass frozen in his hand. His smile stayed, but something behind it shifted, a flicker, like a light bulb about to go out. Kid, sit down. Derek let out a short laugh. This isn't a game. Ethan didn't sit. Messages from someone named Victoria. She called the wedding a circus. You told her 3 years maximum. The whispers started at the back of the room and moved forward like a wave. Heads turned, glasses lowered. 200 people took a second look at the man in the expensive designer suit. Judith shot to her feet. Fiona, control your child. I was already standing. I had gotten up the moment Ethan reached the platform, not to pull him back, but to be close if he needed me. I stood 10 feet behind him, and I did not call him back. Derek shifted his weight. He's a kid. He's making things up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and held up his phone. The screen glowed bright white in the ballroom light. I have the screenshots on my phone right now. Dead silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your ears, that makes 200 people forget to breathe at the same time. Derek's smile finally dropped completely, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw something real cross his face. Fear. I walked to the platform. No rush, no drama, just a mother standing next to her son. I didn't take the microphone from Ethan. I stood beside him and spoke into it with him, my hand resting on his shoulder, steady, grounding, the only thing I needed to do. My son is telling the truth, I said. And I have documents to prove it. I opened my bag, pulled out the large envelope, and held it up so the front tables could see Rachel Whitmore's letterhead. Clean, professional, impossible to argue with. Derek Mercer was fired from Whitfield and Partners 4 months ago for lying about client investment accounts. His company, Mercer Property Group, is a fake company, 0 income, 0 employees, and a mailing address at a UPS store in Stamford. I paused. He is currently carrying $187,000 in personal debt. Gasps. Not whispers. Gasps. The kind that cut through the air of a room like a needle through cloth. Derek's face lost 2 shades of color. This is insane. Brooke, tell them this is. Brooke stood from the head table. Her veil was still in her hair. Her bouquet lay on the tablecloth where she had set it during dinner. Her face was the same color as the white linen. Derek. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Is this true? She's lying. Derek pointed at me. She's jealous. She's always been jealous of you. She made this up. The report was pulled from public records by a licensed attorney. I opened the envelope to the last page and held it up. Her name is Rachel Whitmore. Her bar number is on every page. You're welcome to check it yourself. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The paperwork was loud enough. Brooke stepped around the table and reached for the envelope. She held the first page with both hands. Her fingers left small wrinkles in the paper. She read. As she read, her face changed, not all at once, but in layers, like watching ice crack from the inside out. You told me Mercer Property Group had 12 employees. She looked up at Derek. Brooke, if you just let me. You told me you closed a $4 million deal last month. There's context to all of this. You told me a prenup was an insult to our love. Her voice broke on the last word, not from sadness, but from the sound of something she had believed in shattering against something that was true. The whispers were spreading now. Guests at the nearby tables had heard every word. Those farther back were leaning in, passing pieces of information down the rows like electricity running through water. Ethan held up his phone. The nearest table, Judith's friends, older women in expensive clothes, leaned in. His screen showed the screenshots clearly. V at the top. Timestamps. Message previews. Can't wait for this circus to be over. 3 years max, right? The phone moved from hand to hand. I watched a woman named Margaret, one of Judith's oldest friends, hold the screen at arm's length, read it, and press her hand over her mouth. Oh my God, she said, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. The messages are real. Todd, Derek's best man, took 1 step back, then another. He physically moved away from the man he had stood beside at the altar 30 minutes earlier. Derek grabbed Brooke's arm. We need to talk about this privately. Brooke pulled free with a force that made the nearest guests flinch. Don't touch me. Her voice was still full of grief. Don't you dare touch me. What happened next was textbook. Rachel had once described it to me over coffee. Deny. Attack. Flip it around. Make yourself the victim. Derek ran through every step in real time. He turned to face the crowd, arms wide, voice raised. Are you really going to let a bitter divorced woman and her kid ruin this beautiful day? He pointed at me. She has been trying to wreck this wedding from day one. Ask Judith. She'll tell you. Judith opened her mouth. For 34 years, my mother had never once failed to take the other side if it meant keeping me in my place. But Brooke got there first. Mom. Stop. 2 words. And Judith closed her mouth. Derek turned on Ethan. You went through my phone. That's an invasion of my privacy. You had no right. A voice from the 4th table cut through the room. A man in his 60s. Silver hair. Reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. Brooke's uncle, Martin, a lawyer by profession. The content of those messages matters more than how they were found. Martin's voice had the calm strength of someone who had spent 40 years in courtrooms. I'd sit down if I were you, Derek. Derek didn't sit. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. His jaw tightened. His whole posture shifted from charm to something cornered and desperate. He turned on me. You have no idea what you've done. I will sue you for saying false things about me. For what? I stated public records. He stared at me. I stayed back. And I realized something I should have known the first time he scanned my mother's living room like someone checking the price of everything in it. Derek Mercer had never once been challenged by someone who wasn't afraid of him. He didn't know what to do with it. I need to pause here for a moment, because what happened next changed my relationship with my sister, my mother, and my son permanently. Before I finish this story, I want to ask you something real. If your own family had spent years making you feel like less, and then one moment proved them all wrong, would you forgive them? Type 1 if you'd forgive. Type 2 if you'd walk away. Type 3 if it depends. There's no wrong answer. But my answer might surprise you. Brooke walked to the microphone. Not the confident walk she'd used coming down the aisle. This was slower, heavier, the walk of a woman carrying the weight of what she'd just learned and the wreckage of what she'd just lost. 200 people watched her in complete silence. She gripped the microphone stand with one hand and spoke clearly. The marriage certificate hasn't been signed yet. She turned to the officiant, Reverend Collins, who had been standing near the hallway door with an expression somewhere between professional calm and personal shock. Reverend Collins, please do not file that paperwork. He nodded once. Brooke turned to Derek. Whatever was left of the fairy tale, the diamond ring, the Lockwood estate, the 200 guests, and the 12-layer cake, she let it go in 6 words. We're done, Derek. Brooke, you're being emotional. His voice had the forced calm of a man watching his plan fall apart in real time. Let's go somewhere and talk. I said we're done. She took a breath. And the venue contract is in your name, Derek. You insisted on that. The $85,000 deposit. That's your problem now. I watched the moment that truth hit him. It started in his eyes. A widening, a recalculation, and traveled down to his hands, which he clenched at his sides. He had signed the venue agreement. He had insisted on it. Let me handle this. A man takes care of these things. Those were his exact words. Words Brooke had quoted back to me 3 months earlier. The Lockwood estate contract was non-refundable. $85,000 tied to the legal name Derek T. Mercer. Judith's money had paid for it, but Derek's signature had claimed it, and now it was his anchor. Derek looked around the room for an ally, the same way he had scanned my mother's living room the first time, calculating, looking for something to use. Todd was gone. He had slipped out through the garden terrace sometime during Ethan's speech. The other groomsmen were studying their shoes, their napkins, the tablecloth, anything that wasn't Derek. He turned to Judith. My mother stood at the head table, champagne glass still in her hand, completely still. For the first time in my life, I watched Judith Henderson have absolutely nothing to say. Derek waited. Judith said nothing. You're all going to regret this. His voice was thin now, stripped of all its expensive polish. He pointed at me, then at Ethan, then at the room. No one responded. 200 people. Not a word. He turned and walked toward the exit. The sound of his footsteps was the loudest thing in the room, dressed shoes on hardwood, each step echoing through a ballroom built for music and toasts and applause. He didn't look back. The double doors opened. A rectangle of evening light fell across the floor. Then the doors closed, and he was gone. No one followed him. Not his groomsmen, not his guests, not the woman who had walked down the aisle toward him less than an hour ago. 200 people watched Derek Mercer walk out, and not a single one of them moved. I stood with my hand still on Ethan's shoulder. The envelope was on the podium, its pages open and visible. From across the room, Brooke was looking at me, not at the door Derek had walked through, not at the unsigned papers on Reverend Collins's table. At me. And in her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. She saw me. The ballroom sat in that uncertain space between something that had just happened and its aftermath. Guests murmured to each other, not sure whether to stay or go. Waitstaff stood frozen near the kitchen doors, trays of champagne untouched. Judith hadn't moved. She still stood by the head table, her glass clutched like a comfort object. When she finally spoke, it was aimed at me. Are you happy now? Her voice was quiet, but it carried. You ruined your sister's wedding. I met her eyes. Mom, I didn't ruin anything. Derek did. If you hadn't made a scene. Fiona didn't make a scene. Brooke's voice came from behind Judith, sharp enough to cut glass. She saved me. Do you understand that? Judith turned to face her younger daughter. I watched her search for the script, the prepared response, the usual reply she always had ready. For the first time, there was nothing there. And the things you said about her tonight, Brooke continued. A bargain item with a damaged label. You said that in front of 200 people about your own daughter. Judith's lips parted. Nothing came out. That's who you are, Mom. Brooke's voice cracked, but she held it together. That's not who Fiona is. Something in Judith's face shifted. Not regret, not yet. It was more like the look of a woman who had spent decades building a stage and just watched it collapse under her feet. Her hand trembled. She set the champagne glass down on the table, the first time all night her hands had been empty. Margaret, her oldest friend, gently took her arm. Judith, let's sit down. Judith let herself be led to a chair. She sat. She didn't speak again for the rest of the evening. And Brooke, My little sister, the one who had always looked down at her phone when the cruelty flew, walked toward me. The guests had begun moving toward the exits or gathering at the bar, giving the family space the way people do when they've seen something too private for a public room. The orchestra had stopped playing. The cake stood untouched, its sugar flowers catching the last of the evening light. Brooke stopped in front of me and didn't say a word. She just reached forward and held on. It was the first real hug between us in years. Not the fake kind, the sideways, one-arm kind we had both gotten good at during Judith's holiday dinners. This was a full, tight hug, her face pressed into my shoulder, her veil catching on my earring. She was shaking. "I should have listened to you," she said into my shoulder. 3 months ago you tried to tell me. You weren't ready to hear it then. That's okay. It's not okay. She pulled back. Her makeup was streaked down her cheeks. The bridal shower, taking you off the wedding party, sitting there while Mom said those things to you. While Derek, her voice broke. I never stopped him. I never stopped any of them. We'll figure it out, I said. Not today, but we will. She looked past me and saw Ethan standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, clearly unsure whether to come closer. Brooke stepped toward him, and I watched my 29-year-old sister kneel down on the ballroom floor in her long wedding dress and look my son in the eye. Thank you, Ethan. Her voice was steady. You are the bravest person in this room. Ethan shifted his weight. I just told the truth, Aunt Brooke. She reached up and straightened his tie, the one he had knotted himself that morning, and something in that simple gesture hit me hard. Then Brooke stood up, took the diamond ring off her finger, and set it on the table. He can have it back. It probably isn't even paid for. 2 days after the wedding, Rachel called with the full picture. The marriage certificate was never signed, she said. Reverend Collins confirmed it in writing. As far as the state of Connecticut is concerned, no marriage took place. Brooke won't need to cancel the marriage. There's nothing to cancel. I let that sink in. Nothing to cancel. 6 months of planning, $200,000, 200 guests, and legally, it was as if the day had never happened. Now, for the venue, Rachel continued. I spoke with the Lockwood Estate event manager this morning. The contract is in Derek Mercer's name, his signature, his responsibility. The $85,000 deposit is non-refundable. Brooke and your mother have zero financial obligation. He had insisted on signing it himself, and that decision had just become the most expensive signature of his life. The math was ugly. The venue deposit, $85,000. Wedding costs he had charged to his own credit cards, the rehearsal dinner, the groomsmen's suits, the custom drink menus, roughly another $30,000. Add that to his existing debt of $187,000. And Derek Mercer was staring down a hole of just over $300,000. He'll likely need to file for bankruptcy within the year, Rachel said matter-of-factly. There was one more part, the social media fallout. Several guests had posted from the reception. Short clips, shocked reactions, second-hand accounts. Within 48 hours, Derek's former employer, Whitfield and Partners, released a brief public statement confirming that he had been fired for lying about client accounts and had not been with the company for 4 months. And Victoria Lane, the woman behind the V messages, had blocked Derek on every platform. Mutual friends confirmed it. He had gambled on the Henderson name. He lost the Henderson money, his reputation, and the woman he had kept on the side. Judith called a week later. I almost didn't answer. Her voice was different. Not the voice that commanded dinner tables and delivered warnings in the living room. Smaller. Stripped of the hard polish she usually applied before speaking. Margaret said I should call. A long pause. She said, I owe you an apology. I didn't respond. I let the silence do what silence does. Force the other person to fill it with something honest. The things I said at the wedding, Judith continued. And before the wedding. She stopped, started again. For years, Fiona. The things I've said for years. Okay. I was afraid. The words came out rough, like she had been practicing them and still couldn't get them smooth. After your father left, I was terrified that my daughters would end up like me alone. And when you got divorced, I saw myself in you. And I hated it. There it was. Not the apology itself, but the reason behind the cruelty. Judith hadn't been punishing me for being a single mother. She had been punishing me for reminding her that she was one too. So you punish me for your own fear, I said. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. That's a start, Mom. But it's going to take more than one phone call. I know. You spent 30 years making me feel like the wrong daughter. You said it in front of 200 people. You turned it into entertainment. I know. So I'm not going to tell you it's fine. Because it isn't. I understand. We sat in silence for a while. Not a comfortable silence. More like two people standing on opposite sides of a river, finally aware of how wide it was. "I'd like to try," Judith said. "Then try," I said. "But I'm not meeting you halfway. You have further to walk." 1 month later, Brooke was already a different person. Not a complete change, those only happen in fairy tales. But the edges were shifting. The foundation was new. She hired a lawyer, someone Rachel recommended, to check every shared financial account. The discovery was immediate. Derek had opened a joint credit card in both their names without Brooke's knowledge. $12,000 in charges. Restaurants, clothing, a weekend trip to the Hamptons that Brooke had never been invited to. Brooke filed a dispute and a fraud report with the card company. The charges were reversed within 3 weeks. The account was closed. She sold the diamond ring. $14,000. She used the money to put a deposit on a 1-bedroom apartment in Norwalk, her first place that wasn't chosen by Judith or paid for by Derek. Small, clean. A narrow kitchen. A window that looked out over a courtyard with one stubborn oak tree. She started therapy. Twice a week at first, then once. The kind of quiet, hard work that doesn't make for a good story but makes for a better life. She called me on a Wednesday night in mid-October, her voice clearer than I had heard it in years. "You were right about everything," she said. "And I was wrong about so many things. Including you. You weren't wrong about wanting love, Brooke. You were wrong about who deserved your trust." A pause. "I have a photo of us on my bookshelf now, from when I was 6 and you were 11. We were at that lake house in Vermont. I remember. It's the only photo in the apartment so far. My little sister sold a ring worth $14,000 and called it the best trade she'd ever made. I believed her." The email arrived on a Tuesday in November, from a woman I had never met. "Dear Fiona, my name is Sarah Donovan. I'm 28 years old, and I'm a single mother of a 3-year-old daughter. I'm writing because I saw the video from your sister's wedding. A friend shared a clip that one of the guests posted. I recognized Derek Mercer immediately. I read the rest standing at my kitchen counter, my coffee going cold in my hand. Sarah had dated Derek 2 years before he met Brooke. Same pattern, charming entrance, fast commitment, financial mess. He had moved into her apartment within 4 months, run up $8,000 on her credit cards, and disappeared when she started asking questions about his income. I blamed myself for 2 years, Sarah wrote. I thought I was naive. I thought I was stupid. Then I watched your son stand up in front of 200 people and say what I had been too afraid to say to anyone. She had filed a complaint with Connecticut's Department of Consumer Protection, creating a paper trail that now included Derek's name, his pattern, and a documented history of financial dishonesty across multiple relationships. I forwarded the email to Rachel, who copied the attorney handling Brooke's fraud case. That evening, I showed the email to Ethan. He read it at the kitchen table, the same table where he had first told me about the messages on Derek's phone. She said I helped her, he said quietly. I didn't even know she existed. That's usually how it works. You tell the truth for one person, and it reaches someone you never expected. He set down the phone and looked at me with an expression that was half 12-year-old and half something much older. I just told the truth, Mom. That's exactly the point, Ethan. That's exactly the point. 3 months after the wedding that never was, I sat across from a startup founder at a coffee shop in West Hartford and signed a branding deal worth more than any single project I had done in a decade of freelancing. He had been at the wedding, table 9. He told me afterward that he didn't remember the cake, the flowers, or the venue. What he remembered was the woman who had stood at the podium with a 12-page report in a steady voice and taken apart a scammer without once raising it. That's the kind of clarity I want in my brand, he said. I laughed, the first time the wedding had made me laugh, and signed the agreement. By December, my client list had grown by 3. All referrals from that night. My income was up 40%. And for the first time, the word stable applied to more than just my stubbornness. Ethan was doing great. He had started a coding club at school and was building an app that tracked library book availability in real time, a project that made absolutely no business sense and made me prouder than anything I had ever designed. Brooke and I met for dinner every Thursday. We were careful with each other the way you are with something that broke and is being carefully put back together. We didn't pretend the last 10 years hadn't happened. We didn't rush to some fake happy ending. We just showed up every Thursday and tried to be honest. I had spent 34 years believing I was the damaged one, the scratch label, the bargain item, the wrong daughter at the wrong table. But the truth is, I was the only person in that family who wasn't for sale. And when the bill finally came due, I was the only one who could afford to pay it. Judith started therapy in November. It was Brooke's idea. My condition. She didn't change overnight. I want to be clear about that, because this isn't one of those stories where the villain sees the light and everyone hugs and the music plays. Judith was still Judith. Still fussed over appearances. Still said things that landed sideways. Still arranged her fancy candles before anyone came over. But small things changed. Quiet things. She posted a photo on Facebook in early December. Both daughters, side by side, from a Thanksgiving dinner she had actually invited me to. The caption read, "My daughters, both of them." 3 words. Unremarkable to anyone just scrolling past. But I saw them. I saved the screenshot. I sat with it for a long time. She called me the week before Thanksgiving. Not with a command, but with a question. "Would you and Ethan like to come for Thanksgiving? I'm making your recipe for the sweet potatoes. The one with the pecans." She remembered my recipe. In 34 years of Thanksgivings, she had never once made anything of mine. "We'll be there," I said. And we were. The dinner was awkward in places. Judith corrected herself twice mid-sentence, old habits rising up and being caught before they landed. Brooke shot me a look across the table each time, equal parts amusement and relief. After dinner, I walked through the hallway on my way to the bathroom and stopped. On the shelf, the same shelf that had held nothing but Brooke's photos for as long as I could remember, there was a framed school photo of Ethan. Right next to Brooke's engagement photo, which Judith had quietly replaced with a candid of Brooke at her new apartment, smiling into a coffee mug. My mother didn't become a different person, but she stopped pretending I was invisible. And some days, that's enough. It was a Friday night in January. Cold outside, warm inside. Ethan and I were on the couch with a bowl of microwave popcorn between us, half watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures that he had picked, and I was pretending to understand. "Mom," he said, eyes still on the screen, "do you ever wish I hadn't gone up to the mic?" I turned off the sound. "Every single day," I said. He turned to look at me, surprised. I could see him rethinking that. It wasn't the answer he had expected. "Because you shouldn't have had to, Ethan. A 12-year-old shouldn't have to protect his mother from her own family. That wasn't your job. It was never supposed to be your job." He was quiet for a moment. The deep-sea creatures drifted silently across the screen. "But I'm proud of you," I said. "Not because you exposed Derek. Because you stood up for what was right. When every adult in that room chose comfort over the truth, you chose differently." He picked at the edge of the popcorn bowl. "I didn't do it for the truth, Mom." "Then why?" He looked at me the way he sometimes did, direct, calm, that serious quality he had that surprised people who expected just a kid. "Because nobody gets to talk about you like that. Not ever." I pulled him close. He let me hold him for a full 10 seconds before wriggling away, which, for a 12-year-old boy, was basically a standing ovation. We sat there in the quiet. The small fairy lights he had hung along the bookshelf last Christmas glowed warm against the wall. My artwork, the pieces I had designed, the ones I was proud of, hung in frames I had chosen. 2 mugs of hot cocoa cooled on the coffee table. Nothing in this apartment was luxury, but everything in it was ours. Every square foot, every choice, every lamp, every mug, every truth. If you've made it this far, if you've been listening, really listening, then maybe you see yourself somewhere in this story. Maybe you're the one who sits at table 12, the one whose family makes you feel like a damaged label, the one who has been told over and over by the people who should love you most that you're not enough, not successful enough, not pretty enough, not married enough. Not enough. I want you to hear this. Your worth is not decided by the person sitting next to you or by the person who isn't. It is not measured by a job title, a ring, or a zip code. And the loudest people in the room, the ones who laugh the hardest, who point the fastest, who rank everyone on a scale they invented, they are almost never the ones who matter. Sometimes the person who sees you most clearly is the smallest one in the room. Sometimes it's a 12-year-old boy in a Macy's suit with a phone full of screenshots and a heart full of something most adults have forgotten the name of. They called me a pathetic single mom. My mother called me a bargain item with a damaged label. 200 people laughed, and my son walked through every single one of them to say what needed to be said. My name is Fiona Henderson. I'm 34. I'm a graphic designer, a mother, and the proudest person who ever sat at table 12. Table 12, the table for people they wished hadn't come. Turns out it had the best view in the house. That's my story. And if it resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now I have a question. What would you name this chapter of my life? Type A for the wedding that never was. Type B for table 12. Type C for the scratch label. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, check the description below. I've linked a few that I think you'll love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, your label doesn't define you. Your choices do.